back to another episode of Marc Harvill Art, and this will be our final episode for this particular painting. I think we'll be able to finish this painting up today. So what we're going to be working on this morning, the final element, is bringing in our little swans floating in this lake. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let's go ahead and jump into how I put together adding these swans. So I've gone ahead already and I've sort of sketched in really lightly with my pencil our swans. We're going to have 3 swans here in the lake. The first thing I want to do though is I want to come in and I'm going to be mixing together a little titanium white. I've got some Van Dyke brown, and I'm taking a little bit of dioxazine purple, and that'll create a nice rich kind of brownish color. And I just want to go ahead and block in our little swan in this nice rich brown. And I always find that kind of using dark colors as we paint objects, using a nice dark, solid, rich underpainting for it really helps to bring it out when we bring in the other elements. So this particular swan, he's sort of beginning to unfurl his wings a little bit. As a matter of fact, before I get too far into blocking in these birds, and these are, by the way, these are going to be mute swans. I know there's several varieties of swans. I just think the mute swans are very lovely. But what I want to do, continuing this in the water, in this downward kind of motion, kind of creating that wetness in the water. All along I've been using this comber brush right here. It's got some nice little pointy heads on it, and that's what I mostly used in creating this water. And we need to have the reflection from our 3 swans kind of going in the same motion a little bit here. So the best way to do that, I'm going to go ahead and grab some of that white, and I'm going to reach over here, grab some liquid, because I want to continue to keep that sort of wet. I want to keep that wet appearance. So now we've got these blocked in here real quickly, and we've got our little reflection here, which we can maybe add to a little bit later. But while this paint is still wet, what we're going to do is I'm going to come in to some pure white, and because it's still wet, this pure white's going to pick up the underpainting, and we'll be able to start to form some shapes here. So for now we've got a basic wing kind of cropping up here. And so as this kind of picks up this color, it'll start to kind of darken this paint. And it'll kind of mix together. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is I want to have some nice soft blending. And I can kind of soften as I go. And all this will become shadow later on as I bring on the highlights. But right now I think this is a pretty effective method for kind of introducing some of the basic structure here. Right, so I'm going to go through now and I'm going to do the exact same thing where I'll just kind of create a shadowed silhouette and the beginnings of some blending, the beginnings of shaping and forming our bird. So we'll go to the next one and do the exact same thing, and I'll just fast forward it from this point on. Just describe this. This swan's going to sort of be facing the viewer, and he's going to have the little head kind of cropping up right here. His neck's going to be right here, and he's going to kind of be looking over to the right. So before I even bring in all that detail, I just want to bring in the back, kind of everything happening behind the neck and the head here. And I think it'll be easiest to first bring those forms in prior to bringing that head in. So with that, this is not going to look like much as I bring it in right now, but it'll make a little more sense as we get going in it. But while this is still wet, we can kind of start to come in and form some basic shapes on these feathers. So by no means will this really look much like a swan right now. Okay, so at this point in time, we've kind of laid in the basic structure and some of the kind of preliminary details for our 3 swans here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let this dry, and that way when we come back, now we've got kind of a roadmap that we can work with, and I can start to do a little bit more dry brush blending. This is more of a wet on wet kind of beginning stages on these 3 birds, but coming back we'll do more of a dry blending technique. So we'll let this dry and then we'll come back and we'll pick the video up. This shouldn't take too long, a few hours, because I'm using my Alkyd oil paints. So I think after a few hours of drying time, it should be dry enough that I can start to do some dry brush blending with this. So we'll pick the video up at that point in time. Okay, so we're back now. A few hours have gone by. It's not totally dry, but it's definitely more tacky, and I think with that it's probably dry enough that we can come back now and begin to start applying some detail. So again, we're going to continue to use this 5/0 round brush right here. It's a pretty good tool for this, and we're going to begin to bring in our color. So I would come down, I'm going to grab some titanium white, and I'm going to grab the least amount of cadmium yellow and sort of just slightly tint that color, because I don't want to use pure white. So we'll come back now and begin to just dry brush on our effects. Don't need a lot of paint on the brush. Now this is going to be just a matter of just gently adding this on, because you really want to have this underpainting work to your advantage, and you certainly don't want to kill all that wonderful, beautiful underpainting that you worked so hard on. Again, you're going to continue to think about shape and form. You're going to watch your negative space. And you're going to come in here and you're going to be really kind of sparing, using very, very little paint. Now this is kind of a similar technique that I use when I'm just using acrylic paint. With acrylic you usually have to, because of the dry time, you have really very little blending time available to you. So oftentimes you're kind of relegated to working around that limited dry time. So there's going to be quite a lot of kind of brightness hitting this side of his body. Now as I work my way down, and I'm not picking up any more color, I'm using the same color that I have, and I'm just kind of spreading it, and I'm letting it naturally kind of deplete as we work our way down. So as I'm applying this paint that I'm dry brushing on, I thought it would be noteworthy to mention that I'm not using any thinner or any other medium. I'm just using the pure paint from the tube, keeping it nice and dry because you don't want it to be really wet. And you know, that's kind of what implies dry brush. It's a little bit of a misnomer, but because it's not like, you know, paint's dry. I mean, paint can be dry-ish, it can be thicker, it can be a little less runny, but that's kind of what you're trying to achieve here. Is I've not used any medium or mineral spirits. This is really just purely from the tube. And you're kind of working in layers, and the goal here is you want it to be soft. You just want everything to be nice and soft. And as I mentioned, this is a very common technique for acrylic painting. Our final swan, it's still a little tacky. If I waited maybe till tomorrow morning, it'd be dry enough to draw on here, but what I can more or less do, because I don't really feel like waiting, I've got my oils already laid out, and I don't want to have to do all the cleaning process and you know, cleaning the palette, cleaning the brushes, and having to wait. I just would like to go ahead and draw it in. So more or less what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of carve it into the paint. And this is his neck. I'm just using a pencil because I want to use the point of this to carve this in. So I can see my little carving here. His head kind of comes around and comes down, then goes into his beak. Of course, I don't know if it's necessarily a boy, it could be a girl, but that comes into the beak, and then his neck kind of comes back like that. So his head's going to be in front. Now, you probably can't see that so well on camera, but because of the reflections of the lighting, I can see that I've carved into that. So having done that now, I'm going to come back in here. We're going to go back again, just like we did with the other two birds, into my yellow and my titanium white, but predominantly white, and begin the process of kind of laying this in. So we'll kind of, now that we have our guide with his head there, I can work sort of around his head, get the back of the feathers. And we've got some of that coming here like this, and I'm kind of, again, I'm watching my negative space and I'm skipping around and making sure I'm not killing all that underpainting that we worked on earlier. All right, so this is kind of what we got here with our three little swans. So that would be how I put that together. I'm going to go ahead and back up the camera here. Go ahead and kind of adjust some things so we can kind of get the full effect here. But you know, keeping those strokes pretty simple on those birds, and then you know, giving them a pretty simple reflection with just a downward stroke into the water to kind of follow that water pattern. So that's kind of how I put that together. All right, well, I think for the most part we've completed this painting. I may come back a little bit later and add just a couple little things, pure choices, preferences, just little tweaks that I think might help and set it off. I may come back in and add a few more broadleaves onto our foreground tree. May come back and add a little bit more grasses here, but for the most part, I think we can call this painting complete. So I hope that you're able to watch the different episodes and how I slowly bring together and form a painting like this, and hopefully that was helpful and beneficial to you. Again, I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I do appreciate the support. I'm still trying to grow my base. I'm a fairly new artist to YouTube. As you could probably note from my videos, are not all that professional. But I appreciate that, and we'll look forward to starting a brand new painting here real soon. So have a great day.